the Jets with our good friend Rich Samini, and now our next guest is Jordan Raanan, who covers the Giants at ESPN. Check out Jordan's podcast, Breaking Big Blue, on the ESPN New York app and wherever you get your podcasts. Jordan, busy, huh?
Yeah, look, this is an exciting time of year. It's fun. I know I heard you guys the last couple of days. You're big into the smoke screen stuff out there. You think it's just, everything out there is smoke screen, which I think you're right in that a lot of it is. But I think it just happens naturally. Oh, yeah. Everyone just throwing information out there.
Yeah, of course. And that's what's so frustrating is because it all can't be true, but it all can't be wrong either. So you're trying to ascertain exactly where you're going to fall with this. But my first question, I think, is a legitimate one. Do the Giants feel they need a quarterback? Or is it just a case of we believe one of these quarterbacks may be better than Daniel Jones?
I think that's a multi-layered question, because the number one thing is Daniel Jones this past year suffered another neck injury, his second one, and then he tore his ACL. So now he has 3 injuries in 3 years. So let's start there before we even get to the quarterback evaluation part of it with Daniel Jones. So when you get to that and then you go to the evaluation part, well, Daniel Jones could be pretty good. We still don't know he's good. We still don't know he's great. We still don't know he could be a guy that can lead us to Super Bowls. You have the 6th pick. They're looking at it, I think, this is an opportunity for us to get our future franchise quarterback. We probably don't see it being Daniel Jones. We need to take the opportunity when we have it there. And clearly the Giants did all the work. They're making the phone calls. They're talking to these other teams above them, and they're trying to make a trade. I believe it's for Drake May. I think I'm on record. That's been out there the last few days. That they're trying to make a trade up to get Drake May, and the spot that is available or potentially available is number 3 with the New England Patriots.
See, that's my question. I don't know. I mean, you're not covering the Patriots. Are they okay with Jacoby Brissett as their quarterback? Do they not like Drake May? I understand they have a bad team and they have to accrue assets, but here's your chance to get the 3rd best quarterback coming out of college, and you're going to trade it away. What would New England's thinking be there?
See, I will reject that notion that he's the 3rd best quarterback coming out of college. If you're willing to pass him, they might have a higher grade on J.J. McCarthy. They might have a higher grade on Michael Penix. Not everyone has the same grades. We can go back and say, look at Lamar Jackson. He wasn't the top-rated quarterback. Josh Allen wasn't the top-rated quarterback. Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, they weren't the top-rated quarterbacks. Just because it's perceived that way certainly doesn't mean the teams view it that way. I also think the key there, Michael, is they move back with the Giants. They're doing it with the intention of getting J.J. McCarthy in some way, shape, or form.
At 6.
So they say, we're all right with passing up on Drake May. Yes, we're 6, or they have to move up to 5, whatever, or 4, whatever it may be. But if they get a huge haul from the Giants, they would have to probably have another trade in place. And then the mechanisms are there to still get a quarterback, but at the same time get a monster haul from the Giants. But to the best of your estimation, Jordan, jumping from 6 to 3, what's that package going to look like? So originally when I started looking into this, somebody reached out to me the other day, and the message was like, their 2nd round, and the 2025 first-round pick.
Wow.
So that's a significant amount right there to start with. But if you want your quarterback, it's not going to be cheap. If that's their guy, hey, you go. I'm a big believer. You go get your guy now. I know, Michael. I know you're anti J.J. McCarthy. You just don't see it there, and I agree with you when I looked at it with my own eyes. But when I started talking to people around the league, I mean, there's people who think that Drake May is not going to be a stud in this draft. And as somebody brought up to me, if Drake May didn't have the hype entering the season, and J.J. McCarthy had the hype entering the season, what would we think about this notion that, J.J. McCarthy is the 4th best quarterback in this draft? They're taking the 4th best quarterback, if that were the case. Because I think you could easily make the case that J.J. McCarthy played better at quarterback this season than Drake May did.
I think you could, because Drake May did not play up to the level of expectation coming into the season. But then you look, Penix played very well, and Bo Nix played very well. It doesn't seem like what they do in college has any bearing, Jordan. It's what they do in these workouts with these teams.
I don't know about that. I actually think the private workout maybe, but I don't think the combine and the pro day. Like, I know we sit there and we talk about it, and Jim Harbaugh said it was the greatest pro he's ever seen anyone throw it. I had a general manager that I was talking to and throughout this process, and he always tells me he doesn't put any stock, like literally zero, in the quarterback pro day.
Good for him.
He's throwing on air.
Yeah.
There's no defenders. Like literally zero. Like maybe if you show up and you're out of shape and you just look like you're not interested, that can be a knock against you. But actual throwing part, I really don't see it that. Like the J.J. McCarthy thing, everyone thinks he went to the combine, he did all this stuff, and he zoomed up. I had a general manager tell me while we were at the combine, before all that stuff happened, that J.J. McCarthy was going to be a top pick in this draft. So I think the teams, for the most part, they know it beforehand. It's just we're catching up later, and this impression is out there like, okay, J.J. McCarthy went from being a second-round pick to all of a sudden being a top 10 pick.
All right, so it doesn't break their way. They can't make a deal. What do they do at 6? They go wide receiver? Neighbors?
I think so. I can't definitively tell you. I mean, no one could definitively tell you anything in this process, but I don't feel confident. Like if J.J. McCarthy is there saying they will or they won't pick him, I think it's an option. I know they've been high on him throughout this process, high enough where they want to, invest the top 6 pick on him. I'm not sure, but I think that's in the realm of possibilities. But more likely, I think if they stay at 6, it's, hey, we have a top wide receiver on the board. I personally think it would probably be Malik Neighbors. You're talking about a guy who's his explosiveness, ability to run after the catch. That's what this coaching staff has been really high on, since they got here. Look at the guys that they've added. Jalen Hyatt, right? Wan'Dale Robinson, is a quick, short burst kind of guy. Like that's the profile, the kind of guy that they like. So I do think that Malik Neighbors would be there, but their number one priority, I believe, is trying to trade up and get Drake May.
So it's interesting. I mentioned this yesterday. I want to get your take on it. If they take a quarterback at 3 or 6, I mean, you almost are saying, okay, Dable's the coach for the next 3 years. You can't fire the guy even if they don't make the playoffs this year. He's starting with a new quarterback.
Yeah, it probably buys him an extra year, like probably 2 years, I would say. But look, you never know. I had this conversation with someone with the Giants recently. Like, hey, Dable deserves, he doesn't deserve if they're bad this year. He deserves at least another year. He was coach of the year 1. And I'm like, look, I get that. You can make that argument to me all day. The bottom line is the way this works is when the fan base reaches a point where they're just disgusted by the product and don't have confidence in the team and the organization, owners have to fire coaches. That's kind of how it works. The fan base, when they reach a point where it's bad for the owner's business, that's when guys get fired. So, yeah, we could sit here and say it makes sense to do this and that. Did it make sense for them 3 times in a row to get rid of a coach after 2 years?
No.
We thought Joe Judge was staying, right? Joe Judge thought he was staying. That's why he was fine throwing out, whoever he was throwing out at quarterback when Daniel Jones was injured. Guess what happened? He lost his job.
Yeah.
Pat Shermer, same thing, 2 years, lost his job. Ben McAdoo didn't even get through the second year. John Mara actually came out and made a statement saying Ben McAdoo would return. And like less than a month later, Ben McAdoo, Jerry Reese, everybody was out the building.
But I think the difference here, though, that supports Dable is he seems to be attached to Shane. If Shane's going to draft a quarterback, trade up to get a quarterback at 3, he probably doesn't want to do damage to that pick by having to change head coaches again. Now, John Mara might force the issue, but I would think Shane would want to see it through just to be able to save his own quarterback. Because nothing kills a quarterback more than having to change systems first couple of years of his existence.
It undoubtedly buys them time. But I will say this, and I thought the same as you. They're kind of tied at the hip. They're together. And that makes sense. You wouldn't want to bring in one guy and then be a GM and coach not on the same, path. We've been there before. We saw how big a disaster that was, right? But then John Mara, at the owners' meetings, he was flat out asked that, and he basically said, no, they have different jobs. They're evaluated separately. So maybe they're not quite as tied at the hip in regards to job security as we thought. I mean, I thought what you did, Don. And I thought for sure. I mean, it makes no sense to split them up, but, hey, He's the owner. We've seen them do some wonky things, and nothing is off the board with this team after what I've seen. Ben McAdoo, I can't say this enough. Like, if you come in from like an ulterior universe, that Ben McAdoo was fired. He made the playoffs, went 11-5, and was fired before the second season was over.
So
like that's just crazy.
So last week it came out that there are only a certain number of teams that Bill Belichick would coach. And one of them, it came out that it was the Giants. It didn't come out of his mouth, but that was certainly reported. Mm-hmm. Is that a viable possibility? Would Joe Shane work with Bill Belichick? Would John Mara think about hiring him if things went haywire here?
Joe Shane is super tight with Brian Daboll, so I think he would fight to keep that regardless.
Right.
And I know I mentioned before they're not tied to him. So that would probably have to be something that's pushed by ownership very strongly upon him. I mean, I'm obviously just guessing on this, right? It's not the topic I've talked about with them. But I will also say this. If things go very poorly and this team, has to fire Brian Daboll, and obviously things are in bad shape because you're firing your head coach after another bad year, you're basically building and starting over and hiring a 73-year-old head coach. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, will I say it's completely off the table? No. You know how some of the people in the organization feel about Bill Belichick, but it just wouldn't seem like, and I know he said it, and Bill Belichick would probably take any job of anyone who offered him a head job, but you guys tell me, wouldn't it make more sense, like, if you're going to hire Bill Belichick at this point of his career, the other two teams were the Cowboys and the Eagles.
Right.
Like a team that you're trying to get over the hump rather than a team that's just built, needs to scrap it and rebuild. And I'm sure there's things Bill Belichick would step in here and be like, yo, we need to change this, and this. It doesn't make a ton of sense for that to be the Giants' move.
Now, if they get their wish, Jordan, and they get May, when would you say he starts his first game in an ideal world for the Giants?
I think in an ideal world, it would be year 2.
Okay.
You let Daniel play. He plays well. He has value. You can trade him. He's sort of like Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, you pray that.
Talk about an ideal scenario.
That yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it will work out that way. You hope in your dreams that if you're the Giants that it works out that way. And then you see Drake May the next year. But I think the more realistic thing is, all right, Daniel Jones plays either when he gets injured. You don't want to root for that.
Well, you don't have to. It happens without fail anyway.
Exactly. Or he plays real poorly and things go in the wrong direction and toward the end of the year. That more likely would be the scenario where, okay, that's when we're going to see probably Drake May.
All right, in closing, we're talking with Jordan Raanan, who covers the Giants for us. Jordan, if they move up to 3 and they have the deal of the 6th pick, a second rounder, and next year's first round pick, they better love themselves some Drake May, and you cannot fail with that pick because then it would be a worse pick than what the Jets made with Zach Wilson. You're giving up 2 first-round draft picks, and if it doesn't work out, the next first-round draft pick is going to be in the top 5 too. I mean, they have to love him beyond love.
That would be a total disaster. Yeah, total disaster. Look. And I think if you go back to, Joe Shane has said it, and his mentor Brandon Beane has said it. And like when you love a guy, if he's the guy and you think he's the guy, and I'm paraphrasing, and Brandon Beane said it. Like when they drafted Josh Allen, everyone was saying, even a columnist in Buffalo, I think, said they drafted the wrong Josh. That was one of the phrases that he used, right? Meaning that they should have drafted Josh Rosen, that they thought at the time, which in retrospect, how silly does that sound? But that nobody will remember what you traded for him if he's that guy.
Yeah. But if he's not,
but
man,
you're right. The flip side is you're going to set the organization back 4 years. It's going to be a total disaster. You don't have the draft capital. The team around them still isn't very good. They're going to be starting over in 3 years from, the ground floor with bare bones nothing. And this organization is going to be an absolute mess.
If they give up that much for him, they might like him more than Caleb Williams.
Yeah, you know what? And I heard you guys say you don't know what happened if Washington, passed on Jaden Daniels. By the way, that's a guy I know that is a lot of love inside this Giants building here. Like, so if he didn't become available, I think a lot of teams would be fighting for him there. I mean, there would be a huge bidding war in my estimation, if somehow, some way, Jaden Daniels was available at 3, and I think the Giants would be right in the middle of
So
it.
it sounds like they're high on a couple of quarterbacks here. Then that makes me feel better.
I think that's usually the way it is. I don't think it's these guys are all talented. I mean, I spoke to general managers like the talent's there with J.J. McCarthy. You know, like it's not like he's not talented. We just haven't. It's just a huge projection because they haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen him. Okay, go be the guy. And because of that, we're sitting here making projections. But let's be honest. Think about it. What does everybody really know about quarterback evaluation? Look at how many teams miss. And the Giants apparently love Drake May. I spoke to people. I mean, this is a quote. It says, "Worries me. Anytime I see this dude, he just doesn't have it." So there's people out there that have the opposite, view of Drake May. There's other guys that are out there saying, we think this kid could be a star. So there's a big boom bust element to a guy like Drake May. But, if you're going to, there was a big boom bust element to a guy like Patrick Mahomes too. That was the big thing with him, right?
Well, boom, boom, boom.
Enjoy the.
I think Ben McAdoo actually told me about. Ben McAdoo once told me about Patrick Mahomes. He said, "This guy's either going to be a total disaster or he's going to be an absolute star."
Yeah, I could say that. I don't know anything. I mean, what kind of evaluation is that? I can make that evaluation.
No. Is that he didn't think there was anything in between. Like there was no in between because there was so much craziness to his college state. Like he would run around and just throw the ball across the field, behind his back, like do these ridiculously crazy things. So this is part of the quarterback evaluation. Nobody knows in the end if these guys are going to be good.
Well, enjoy tonight, and we will be reading you tomorrow and listening to you tomorrow. Thanks, Jordan.
Man.
Hey, sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me on, and enjoy the draft.
All right, this portion of the Michael K. Show on 98.7 ESPN brought to you by Mercedes-Benz of White Plains, proud member of the Pepe Auto Group, the name you've trusted since 1968. Now it's time for Don to read something.
Get more